Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad that today I get to hang out with Paul Bryan and just steal out of his brain things that we can do to grow, but also things we can do to stay sane. Paul, are you feeling like you're staying sane lately?
Oh, look, I always like to err on the side of just a little bit of kooky. It keeps the ball rolling and makes me not bored.
Okay, I can second that if that's helpful. Well done. Okay, so today what we're looking at is I've been to a lot of Paul's events and I like, Paul, the work you do. I really do. Okay, and I learn from them. And what I'd love to do is try and get a bit into your brain about what's behind these events you put on. Like, why do you do them? What do you want people to get out of them? And what do people get out of them? And like, full disclosure, Paul and I don't work together. I just love his work. Okay. So Paul, what is it with you and always putting on events? You know, Perth is just up the road from the rest of Australia, and yet you just travel the whole place. What
Yeah.
is it about events that you want to get people together?
I've been working with like a bundle of providers or just a number of providers for the last few years. And we sort of got to this point of every quarter we were having like a big planning day where we sort of launched the next 3 months, what was happening. And we got to the point because it's really good to get everyone together because we kind of had like a good split all across Australia. So that's how we ended up with the first summit, like May last year. And it was a whole lot of fun getting a bundle of people together. But I also thought, geez, would it be cool if we had like more people than like, the 12, 15 who are actually going to travel because not everyone can just travel to do that. So we just opened it up and it was a really, really cool experience having like 40 odd providers in a room. I mean, I am an introvert. I get energy from taking time to myself, but I love being with people. I love being in a room, tangibly solving problems. So I thought, why not just take this 4 times around the country and be a part of what's happening in each state. And that's how we sort of ended up with our Provider X events as well, just going around once a quarter in each state. And again, just inviting other people as well. Then just giving other people access to that as well has just proven really helpful for them just to go, hey, you know what? Business happens and it happens very fast a lot of the time. And all of a sudden it's the next quarter. So just planning it out is a lot of fun.
It makes sense. And when I went to your conference at the Gold Coast, probably two-thirds of those guys seem to be already in your programs and a third of them not in your programs. And so when I went there, I was like, am I going to feel like an outsider? But that's just not the sort of people that go to these events. The sort of people who the cool kids from high school aren't there. You know, like, what is that unusual or is that like, no, that's deliberate? Like, how did you create that so that someone could come in and not feel like an outsider?
Well, I was an outsider in high school, so I really don't want that for myself. So I'm really glad you said that. I wasn't in the cool group, just letting you know. I think what really happened was that we've prefaced that a lot with our guys in the group, is that we really, really value collaboration at all levels, and not just inside the group, like with other people. Like we have a whole thing towards that. But also generosity is something we've worked on really hard over the last few years. So for instance, in our group, I have actually booted out one person for complaining that someone else was asking a question that they should know.
That's a bit awkward, isn't it? Like,
Well,
what?
well, it's this point of everyone has to ask a stupid question at some point, and if there's not a platform for someone to ask a stupid question, then they should be able to find that somewhere. And I think people do that in Facebook groups and get absolutely slammed for asking, "How do I build this particular thing?" or "When do I put on my first manager?" or these types of things. And so we just created a really generous space where someone could ask a question and everyone go, oh, this is what I did. This is what's helpful for me. And so that's just sort of bled out into the events where when our guys are at the events, someone asks a question, they can just help, which is really, really good.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I noticed a lot of the times, like my best memories of that event at the Gold Coast were when you or Tanya Gomez or someone would be talking and they'd be like, right, talk to the people in your group about this.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, how is that SIL provider over there going to help that community access person over here? But we've actually got this fairly common problems, and it more came down to business experience than specific which sub part of NDIS they're in. I see a lot of humility in that, you know, because a lot of people when they're running events, they want to be the center stage. Oh, it's my event. Look how important I am. I don't see any of that crap with you guys. Like, how did you build that culture?
Insecurity, mainly. I don't want everybody looking at me all the time.
Ah, it's
No,
working for you.
I've definitely been part of events where it's all about the host, but I also know that I haven't got all the answers. I've told most people when they're asked what I do, I'm a coach. I operate across the business to help raise the standard across the board. but I'm not the silo in marketing, right? I'm not the HR professional. I'm not going to solve all those problems, but I can definitely connect you with the people that are. So we look at it and just get those baseline things in, get things operating exactly how they should. So when it comes to compliance, I'm 100% going to have Tanya there and go, hey, Tanya, like, can you jump in and talk about this? Because I'm not a compliance expert. And then she says something like, hey, I want you guys to chat about that thing we've just organized. And somebody else has solved that problem just a little bit differently, or they do it a bit different in South Australia than they do in WA. And so that was a real helpful tool that someone learned that they wouldn't have gotten that information previously. So I think if we can just get people who have done these things, we get a higher level of information really quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. And I see that flood down through those sort of groups. And again, like I'm trying to understand how your groups work and how you built that, because people listening are going to be like, I can do that in my team. Like when you had, say, Chris Lapper there explaining a whole heap of marketing things, and Chris Lapper, in my opinion, would be Australia's best NDIS marketing person by a mile, hands down.
Oh,
There's no one
yeah.
even close to him. Like people like Greg Chadwick or myself, we're great in our lane, but he's just like the general go-to guy. And just the humility of him being like, yeah, ask Greg that question or ask Michael that question. It really showed that people were there for each other. And so when I look at your events, you've built this culture of, we're going to make it so everyone leaves feeling like a champion. We're going to make sure everyone leaves feeling like they learnt something new. But it's not about I don't even think it's about your content, Paul. Like, your content's great and all, especially considering you spent half a week or half a month or something writing those books. But I think it was just the fact you put quality people in a room, good things are going to happen. You know, like, was that deliberate, or is it like, no, that's actually what we rely on?
No, so we really relied on what we call the white space between sessions. So, for instance, we started Summit with that networking the night before, which had a massive impact on the rest of the week, because then people were walking in to the first day session, talking with people from different states that they've never met before. But they had a meal together the previous night, and they learned about their kids, and they were comfortable with them. They sat at the tables with them, and conversations started immediately. Whereas, if we didn't sort of have space for that type of thing, then people would be in there really cold. It's like, hey, talk to your neighbors. I'm not telling this person nothing, right? Because you just haven't built up just that little bit of trust to be able to help. And so the lunches were, I kind of made it a bit difficult. I was offered to have lunches in the restaurant where everyone would sit at like tables of 4 or 6. I said, no, let's make it standing and make it really awkward for everybody. So they kind of have to group together and sit on the couches. But like, I literally had people coming in from a lunch session and going, oh man, I just made this new connection, and this guy just helped me with this thing, and it was so good. So that's a real priority, is that space between sessions as well, because not only do you learn in the sessions, you debrief, you talk about the information, you get other access to it, and it just expands and goes across your whole business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm really glad you didn't have lunches in the restaurant, because then we wouldn't have been able to chat with people like that. That really was good. I guess for me, I really want to go to the next one. Short of the next convention, whatever it's called, Summit, short of something dramatic happening in my family, I can't wait to be there, because I now feel like I've got other people who are in my world. Like, I don't know about you, Paul, but I don't have a lot of friends in my local area who I can go and make a joke at the expense of your local seal provider about, because they won't get it. But these people, like, I feel like they live in this world. I guess a question I'd ask you as well is, if you were recommending for other people in their team or whatever, trying to build a culture of being real, being transparent, not having to hide behind this fake veneer of, I've got my life together. It's like, what other things do you think are factors just across the board outside of the summits and stuff you run?
Look, I've worked across multiple industries, and I can't believe that in this space it does feel so segmented, even within businesses, right? So when I was younger, we literally had toolbox meetings where we would like sit down and chat on the day. But that was like, the boss would come along and we'd actually talk about what happened on the weekend. We'd find out what the things we were sort of dealing with and what we were figuring out. And even when I had my own business, we caught up regularly, right? And it just created this team culture. One of the really cool things we did, one of our clients recently, they were having some like team issues and that sort of stuff. She put on a dinner at her house, and the dinner at her house, around the dining table with her core leadership team, went through some of the processes. She didn't have time to cook, so she ordered in a whole heap of takeout. And they just chilled out. They laughed around some stuff. They went through some new processes they were rolling out and just had massive team buy-in. The team were just going, "Oh, this is all. I understand what your vision is. It wasn't just portrayed to me on a poster in the office. It's real to me. I understand why we're doing what we're doing." So yeah, just actually doing life with the people you're working with is actually a real business strategy.
Yeah, that makes heaps of sense. Okay. I guess a quirky question is, how on earth did you get Amy Gray to come to this next event? Like, heck, she's got a life. She's got kids. She's got a lot happening. How on earth?
Driving 6 hours to be there.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, she is amazing. We've chatted quite a few times, and I reached out to her a couple of years ago just saying, "Hey, Amy, I love business. I want to help people in this space, but I'm not a provider, nor am I the parent of a participant." And she just has such an amazing insight in how she works on what she works on, how she helps businesses to really understand the participant and the whole ecosystem that they're dealing with, and how to bring that into, like, for instance, staff culture, right? It's like helping people really understand what needs to be happening on a day-to-day basis. Because what is happening on the day-to-day basis for some of these participants is absolutely horrendous, and it can be forgotten really quickly because you're doing business.
It can be.
Really, really cool aspect that she comes from. And obviously, she slaps people over the face pretty quickly, which is really, really cool too.
She does. She doesn't stuff around, does she? She's like, right,
no stuffing around.
Let's get this solved, Okay, that makes sense. And then the other question I'd love to ask you is, how does this work for your family? Because, like, if I look at my family, in the last year, I've traveled a fair few times, a lot of times for work. And it actually has an impact because I get home from that travel. I've got a half a week worth of work that I need to do and a family who forgets what I look like. It's bad for me. Okay, so I've decided in the next 12 months, I'll travel about a third or a quarter of what I've done in the last 12. How do you do that? Like, how does your family work with you traveling around doing all these events?
Look, I'm blessed that my kids are a little bit older now. I may not be able to tell, but there's a reasonable amount of grey in the beard here. And what we've done is we just sort of really sat down. My wife is quite busy with her work. My kids have got stuff going on. And so we just sat down and looked at the calendar and go, right, when works for a start? Because, we've got my son's year 12 graduation this year. My other son's got basketball finals coming up. I don't want to be away for these things, and I don't want to be putting, just throwing everything onto my wife and going, "Hey, you deal with this. It's all good." So we just sort of really worked out when was good for us. And I'll be honest, some of the times I'm traveling are not good for the event. They're not. There are other things going on at the same time that people might want to go to, but this is when works for me, and we've just gone, this is viable for us. Also limiting it, like we're not like just going willy-nilly. Plus, I'll be honest, I've taken my kids to a few events this year as well, so they've come with me on the travel and chilled out for the time when I'm doing the work stuff, and then we go hang out for the day as well. So yeah, we try and just work that in.
That makes sense. All right, and then the last question I'd ask would be, who is Paul behind the business side of things? Like, because I mean, if you look, who's Michael behind the business is, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I love playing soccer, I love eating, I don't know, chicken wings at the pub on Sunday afternoons with my daughter. All right. Who's Paul outside of work?
Paul outside of work. Paul, one, loves what he does. So I'd like to think I'm relatively similar wherever you sort of meet me. This is just an extension of what I love doing. Absolutely. I'm a dad. I coach my son's basketball team for his school. I go to all his state basketball games. We've had some early mornings driving a very long way to sit in a very cold, although I do appreciate that he chose basketball and not soccer. So we are playing inside and out of the rain. So that's a bonus. Been married for 20 years. So my wife is a pastor who looks after pastoral care at our church, and I look after people who are sort of new in the church, and we do some Bible study courses. And I play guitar. I'm really, really okay at it. And it's not a whole lot else. I'm a pretty simple guy. 100%. I'll not go with chicken wings. I'll probably go with the ribs at the pub. And I like a hazy IPA. Just if anybody's ever buying, hazy IPA beer is probably my go-to.
This is hilarious. I used to run a youth group when I was in uni. You and I would have been like great mates. Anyway, I just think this is the best. Paul, thank you for hanging out. I hope that every man his dog gets to your events. I know that you price them such that you're not actually making much money at all out of them. You're covering costs because I know there are other business advantages to those events. So it's very easy for people to get to those events. And Paul, just thank you for what you do. You're doing great things and I appreciate it.
Great time, mate. And thank you so much for chatting. I love chatting with you, dude.
It's good fun, isn't it? We'll do it again.
It's about
Catch you
All right,
another
man.
time.
Yeah.